CuriosityStream has thousands of documentary films and shows available on demand on any device. We're the Netflix for nerds, the Hulu for history buffs, the Disney Plus for the scientist in us. There sure are a lot of streaming services, aren't there? CuriosityStream is the one you definitely need if you're the type to nature dock and chill, if you're an armchair astronaut, if you prefer physics to psychics, or perhaps you know a precocious paleontologist. Go to curiositystream.com to learn more and sign up today.
Coming September 1st, Rewind 9/11.
Today, we've had a national tragedy.
An incredible plane crash into the World Trade Center.
A look back at the tragedy of that day.
Another explosion has taken place at the Pentagon.
It became very apparent that what was happening was terrorism.
Fox News presents Rewind 9/11.
People who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Listen on Odyssey.
We're so deep in this, it's always good to get another perspective from someone who covers baseball. No one does it better than Eno Saris. He's with us right now on our Premier Chevrolet of Carlsbad fan hotline. Love to have him, as always. Good morning, Eno.
Good morning, guys. I'm so sorry.
It's all right, and you don't need to make anyone feel better. It's not your responsibility. I will say, though, it feels, as a Padres fan, and the listeners that we get calling in, Padres are one game out in the wild card. It feels like they're dead and buried. They're 20 games out, that there's no hope at the end of the season. Now, what it feels like is not necessarily always reality, though, and someone who studies baseball the way that you do, I assume, has some perspective on that.
Well, it's a 50-50 coin flip. Maybe weighted slightly towards the Reds at this point because they've got one in the bank, but it's still up in the air. And big guy comes back today in Yu Darvish. Blake Snell seems to be pitching really well, so at least you got two horses. I think the major problem here is the size of the stable, though. The pitching.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have essentially right now, a 3-man rotation, right? In Musgrove, Snell, and again, you're hoping Darvish comes back today and is fully healthy. Even when Lamet comes back, he had that hip infection. He's probably going to be he's going to be relegated to the bullpen.
An inning at a time.
Inning at
probably
a time,
every third day or
which
something.
Which is basically what he did as a starter all year. I mean, they've been up against it, and you know what. The past is the past, and even last night is the past. I wanted to ask you about the future. Now, you were on a podcast recently, and I'm not purposely withholding the name of the podcast. I can't remember which one it was, and I would gladly give it a shout-out. If you remember, please do. You were talking about what happens when Padres prospects, I guess, go to other teams. Can you reiterate that for our audience that hasn't heard it?
Well, I was talking to a pitching coach at a different team that was working with a prospect that had just come over, and they went through the sort of regular thing that pitching coaches go through these days, where they say, okay, we see like your sliders, your meat and potatoes pitch. This is your action pitch. We actually think this is your best pitch, but we think it could be better if we change the shape on this pitch. So we're looking to add a little more sweep to your curveball, something like that, Right. And the prospect said, I've never been talked to that way.
I know you...
That's a huge problem. I mean, it's a huge, huge problem.
Yeah, and I think generally you can also see it. The way that I see good pitching development, it's funny. I think people look for like homegrown stars, but I think stars are just really rare. Stars just Tatis. I don't think your player development makes a Tatis.
Right.
Tatis is just a special player.
He makes a Tatis. He is just who he is. Yes.
What good player development does is take, let's say, a failing starter and turn him into an elite reliever. Take a middle reliever and make him good enough for the eighth. I was just talking to a scouting director, and he said, good player development moves a player a half grade. And that's to say, that in scouting speak, guys are 40s or 45s or 50s. They sort of sort these people into buckets. That means you're moving a guy from a 45 to a 50. You're moving him from a middle reliever to maybe a late game reliever. And I'm just not seeing that from Padres player development. Like, I'm not seeing pop-up relievers. I'm not seeing like a fifth or sixth starter that comes up and is better than you expected. You know, like over in Cincinnati, for example, they had this guy Vladimir Gutierrez. Nobody's ever heard of him. He's not going to be a star probably, but he popped up and he gave them really good starts when they needed it. So he was prepared for the major leagues, and he had his pitches in the best shapes possible, and he was ready to go for 6 innings. Yeah, I don't see that from young Padres pitchers.
Now, to be fair, you know, like last season, Adrian Morejon and Michel Baez were kind of those guys. They came up as young, developed players who gave the Padres a little lift when they needed, you know, depth in the rotation, and then both of those guys ended up out for the season that they were counting on to be some of that rotation depth this year, you know.
That is part of it, but you can't say that the Padres have necessarily had it worse in that department. You look over at the Dodgers; they had Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin as their sort of 5th and 6th depth guys, and they lost both those guys and still managed to turn out a couple guys to replace them. So, and for my money, like, you know, I have a stuff stat that tells you like how good a pitch is based on its movement and velocity. And when I look at that stat, it tells me that Morejon's fastball was actually not that great of a fastball. It was very fast, but it didn't have good shape. I look at Ryan Weathers' fastballs. They do not have good shape. And on top of that, they're asking Ryan Weathers to throw the 4-seam more than the 2-seam, and the 2-seam is a better pitch for him. So, you know, I just see, you know, you look at Cal Quantrill, you know, how he's doing in Cleveland, you know. I just feel like, you know, that and I don't want to put this all on Larry's feet. You know, I talked to Chris Paddock recently. He said Larry really helped me get my curveball to where it is, and it looks like a legit third pitch now. So I'm not saying Larry's a terrible coach. I think it's more systematic. It's more systemic. It's the whole. They need to kind of look at their player development, I think.
You know, it's funny, you know, because if you looked at Ben and Woods and Paul, you would say they don't have good shape.
No, not at all.
We're also not fast.
Poor shape. Not good velo.
You're gonna have one or the other.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, though, you wrote recently about the spin rate revolution, the pitch, the foreign substance rule being impacted, and what's been kind of the fallout? Obviously, there was a furor and an uproar early. Things have quieted down a little bit recently. I thought it was interesting, though, that I saw last night Blake Snell, who pitched so well, his spin rate was also the highest it's been since they implemented the no sticky stuff rule. And is there anything to that there, you know?
There's definitely, I don't want to, you know, speak on Blake in particular. I try to stay away from sort of scapegoating because this is a rule that we just started enforcing this year, and it's kind of an awkward situation for everybody. But in general, spin rate is creeping back in. You know, about a quarter of the people who lost their spin rate after the enforcement have gotten it back. And then there's also a weird thing happening where the difference between innings from inning to inning has gotten bigger, suggesting that some people are kind of being a little bit more bold right after they get checked. Because if you think about it, the checks, the way they do it, they check the same 3 places. So what if you put it in a 4th place? And then they also kind of do it like in an early inning and a late inning. So if you got checked in the first, you could be like, okay, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, I'm probably good.
Wow, yeah. I guess I didn't think about it like that. I mean, you see, yeah, they've only had, really a couple of guys even get dinged. Caleb Smith was the latest for Arizona, and even he said, no, it's just sweat and rosin. And I don't know. I mean, it seemed a bit eye-washy when it all came out. Now, you want to crack down on that stuff. And actually, I mean, it's we're not hitting anyway. The Padres aren't hitting right now. That's been a huge. So not only do we only have a very short stable of arms, you know, our offense has gone beyond ice cold. And is there anything you're seeing looking at that? I mean, you know, have you done a deep dive at all on their offense?
Well, I believe in this offense. Manny, if you look at the process stats, Manny has been fine. I don't know exactly why it's not turning out for him, but like in terms of barreling the ball, in terms of plate discipline, contact, the things that you should look at in season, he's doing fine. Tatis is Tatis. Cronenworth is amazing. And I've heard a lot of sort of, Grisham's gone ice cold. The league's figured him out. Grisham has a Joey Votto level eye, you know, and I think that no matter what sort of ins and outs and ups and downs he has, he's always going to get you walks and good center field defense. So I just named like sort of 5 people. That's as good as, most teams can do, right? Could you ask for more out of the bottom third of the lineup? Maybe, but I think that those guys, Jurickson Profar can foul balls off until tomorrow comes.
Yeah.
So they all have skills. I think that the hitting, is just a funk. I don't think that it's necessarily anything to worry about.
Before you go, Eno, so I know you said 50-50. I know the playoff odds calculators don't have it nearly that high for the Padres. What's your ultimate kind of guess as to how this plays out with the Padres, the Reds, and maybe some other teams? I mean, Cardinals not totally out of it either. I think they're 3.5 back. They probably still think they've got a shot at this sort of thing. How this last month plays out?
The Padres have stars. I think a few more than the Reds do. And I'm betting on the Padres, man.
Wow!
I think they're going to get it together.
Wow, there's no better baseball mind. Did I see on Twitter? Are you talking to teams about doing some player development type stuff? What's going on? Fill us in.
Yeah, I enjoy making content, but over the years I've helped a couple players, with their careers. Not being paid, just sort of informally talk to them about, what the stats say and what I see that they could improve. And that just gave me so much energy, and I loved it. Like, I just loved being able to help. I was really helpful, I think, or not really helpful. I was just a little bit helpful for Yonder Alonso did all the work. But remember, the year before Yonder Alonso hit 30, I was consulting with him. And when he hit 30, I was like leaping off the couch for 25.
Peter Seiler, get him on the payroll right now.
Yeah,
he's like, he can be like the analytical Tom House of baseball.
but so I don't know. The offers, starting to get a little bit better. The kids are starting to get a little bit older. It's a little bit more attractive to me. But right now, just sort of talking to certain teams and. Thinking about it myself.
Seeing you with that beautiful head of lettuce that you have under a brown and yellow Padre hat, maybe somebody Photoshop that ASAP and tweet it to Ben and Woods, because I got to see it, Hopefully somebody makes some phone calls, man.
It would be great. My old colleague Dave Cameron from Fangraphs.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yep.
Thank you, man.
Hired, even though AJ, I guess, didn't read about all the times he ripped the Padres. Hired him anyway. Then learned about it after the fact. That one of my favorite stories. Eno, always great having you on. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me.
Eno Saris with us on our Premier Chevrolet of Carlsbad fan hotline. Save money the right way with Premier Chevrolet of Carlsbad. Visit them today in the Carlsbad Auto Mall. Chevrolet, find new road.
CuriosityStream has thousands of documentary films and shows available on demand on any device. We're the Netflix for nerds, the Hulu for history buffs, the Disney Plus for the scientist in us. There sure are a lot of streaming services, aren't there? CuriosityStream is the one you definitely need if you're the type to nature dock and chill, if you're an armchair astronaut, if you prefer physics to psychics, or perhaps you know a precocious paleontologist. Go to curiositystream.com to learn more and sign up today.
Coming September 1st, Rewind 9/11.
Today, we've had a national tragedy.
An incredible plane crash into the World Trade Center.
A look back at the tragedy of that day.
Another explosion has taken place at the Pentagon.
It became very apparent that what was happening was terrorism.
Fox News presents Rewind 9/11.
People who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Listen on Odyssey.